Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at the first Mythic Plus key I did in Season 2. So this is a Mists 15 that we two-chested, and I did 8.7k overall DPS. So let's just get right into it. The first thing I want to say is this new Tormented affix. I'm not really sure how I feel about it. So Prideful had its ups and its downs, right? Prideful was really good for giving you a huge damage buff and like a lot of mana regen and everything for your healer. So it made it so that you could do like really big stuff that you couldn't do otherwise, right? So that was one of the benefits of Prideful. But one of the downsides, the main downside of Prideful, other than them being really hard, especially the higher you go, the main downside is that a lot of the routes became very much the same over time, right? You would only ever do one route in your Mythic Plus key, right? It's like we have to get 20% Prideful here, we need the 40% Prideful here, we need the 60% Prideful here, and it didn't give you much room for variability. Whereas with Tormented, we kind of get that back, right? Because as long as you kill all of the Tormented guys, and even then there's an argument about whether you actually have to kill all of them. But as long as you kill all the Tormented guys, it doesn't really matter. Like your trash percentage doesn't matter. You don't have to hit like those breakpoints before certain hard things or anything. So I'm not sure how I feel about it. I like that it lets you have more creativity in your routes when you're doing Mythic Plus, but I dislike, just from a DPS perspective, I dislike how the powers don't seem to be super influential. I'm not sure as far as like healers and tanks go. I know healers have a couple really good ones. I played a couple keys on Holy actually, and there were a couple that I really liked, a couple of the Anima powers. But for DPS at least, there's not a ton that are super good. The big ones that come to mind are the one that gives you stats, the champions thingy. Don't remember what it's called. I take it in this key, so we'll see here in a couple minutes. The one that gives you stats is pretty nice, and then the other one that's pretty nice is well, there's two. The one that the volcanic plumage is pretty nice, mostly for CC. Honestly, I was on PTR. The volcanic plumage was doing a ton of damage as well as a bunch of CC, right? Because every time it goes off, it knocks up anything it hits. But it got nerfed coming from the PTR to live, so it doesn't do as much damage, right? But it still has the CC side effect, right, where it knocks stuff into the air. So that's really nice because it saves. You could run like ranged heavy comps. Like right now we've got a Warlock and a Shadow Priest, right? So we only have the two kicks. Our tank and our Demon Hunter are our two kicks. But if we all take Volcanic Plumage, which this is the thing I was talking about, Champion's Brand, that gives you the increased stats. If we all take Volcanic Plumage, then it doesn't really matter that we don't have a ton of kicks, as long as our plumages are doing the kicking for us, right? So that's an interesting thing. Maybe there will be strats in the future around that, where probably not, I imagine, because you can't choose when the volcanic plumes go off, so it's pretty random. So you could get like super unlucky. You could be banking on your volcanic plume. You could be like, okay, we have no kicks, but we're gonna do this pack anyway because we've got plumages, and right here I pop Vampiric Embrace because we've got the double thrashing going on. This is a tyrannical week, so it's not that painful, but anyway, yeah, you could be like, okay, we're going to do this really big pull even though we have no kicks because our plumes are going to interrupt everything, and then you get really unlucky and none of your plumes ever go off, and then you all just die, right? Yeah, so that would be an issue. So I don't imagine, I mean, you want to have like kicks that you can use on command, obviously, right? Like having an interrupt from a player is way better than having just the volcanic plumage. Okay, so this Oros guy, the Oros Coldheart, he is an interesting tormented boss for sure. The fire dude that we did before, not super hard. all you really want to be looking to do as a Shadow Priest on that fire guy, I'll pause so that I can talk about this guy a little bit after. The fire guy, all you really want to do is mass dispel the melt soul debuff that's on people. I usually hold off on my mass dispel until it's on like 4 people, all of my homies, or me and 3 other people, and then I mass dispel, because you can mass dispel up to 5, and healers can typically, depending on how good your healer is, and the level of the key, etc., how squishy everybody is, healers can typically handle 3 of those debuffs, but once you get to 4, it starts to be pretty overwhelming. You need a lot of HPS to handle that. So mass dispelling it is perfectly fine. It does nothing negative when it gets dispelled. It just goes away, right? So that's really all you want to be doing on the fire guy. I know this is the frost guy, but on the fire guy, all you really want to be doing is dodging the big swirlies, obviously, kicking Inferno. You can handle the Inferno kick, though, with just a tank kick and a melee kick. You only need 2 kicks, and they can get every single Inferno as long as they alternate. So I hold my interrupt for the off chance that they don't alternate, right? And somebody, like the melee and the tank, kick at the exact same time, and then I can back up with mine. But yeah, other than that, just mass dispel the melt soul every time it gets to like 4 or so, which should not be very often. It should be like near the end of the Tormented boss, or never, right? Depending on how fast you kill the Tormented boss. And then for this Coldheart guy, this guy is scarier in my opinion, just because the fire guy, I think the fire guy and the frost guy are both like a healer mechanic, really, because there's a lot of HPS that has to happen. The fire guy, it's damage on everybody basically, and the frost guy, it's a lot of damage on whoever gets this circle and like no damage on anybody else. So it's the fire guy is like AoE healing, and the ice guy is like single target healing, which means it's a lot sketchier in my opinion, because if your healer doesn't realize that the person with this circle on them is the only person taking like any damage, which is not entirely true. Some people are still taking damage, but it's mostly the person with the circle on them. If your healer doesn't recognize that, then they're not going to be like spamming heals on this guy, this warlock right now. It was me earlier, and they're going to die. So whenever we're doing this Coldheart guy, I'm very what's the word? I'm very generous with my defensives, right? So like with this one, I'll fade this for sure. Yeah, I just faded this, and I'm taking 5% less damage, and it's still almost killing me, right? So yeah, so I mean, I almost die there, like, yeah. So I'm pretty sure I used my lock stone too. Yeah, I used my health stone. Yeah, so that guy is like pretty sketchy. If you're, I'll pause here too so I can talk about this. If your healer is not like focusing you super hard, like our healer could probably have kept me up by themselves, but it was kind of sketchy, right? I faded and I popped a health stone and I still almost died. Dispersion right there is like a really, really easy, good use. So yeah, Desperate Prayer, fade, and disperse if you feel like you're going to die. And then the only other thing to watch out for, that Coldheart guy for DPS is a positioning boss. All you're really trying to do is not get hit by the cold snap beneath your feet and not get hit by the frost blast in front of you. Remember that the Coldheart guy gives you a 50% movement speed reduction. So you need to move twice as early as you typically would to dodge something, right? If something's coming out and it takes you 2 seconds to get out of the way, it's going to take you 4 seconds now, right? Because you have a 50% movement speed debuff. So keep that in mind. Dodge earlier rather than later on the frost guy. And then these are the powers that he gives you as a damage dealer, right? This 10% increased damage to targets you successfully interrupt is trash for Shadow Priest, because the shortest our interrupt could ever be is 30 seconds if you take the last word talent, and every 30 seconds getting 10% increased damage to something is not great, right? This one is pretty good. I end up taking this one, the Regenerative Fungus. It's not a very big heal, right? and it has an internal cooldown. I don't remember how long, but it's not every single time you take damage. It's like if you take damage, then you have to wait 6 seconds or something before you get the next heal. So this one's pretty good. And then this one, the Vial of Desperation. This one's good. It's not good for preventing one-shots, but it is. Dratnos said this in his video when he talked about the Mythic Plus powers. This one's not good for preventing one-shots, but it is good for preventing 2-shots, right? So if you get hit by something way hard, and then something else hits you way hard, this will help you survive that kind of scenario, right? So let's say this guy casts one of his shadow bolts on you. Right after that, you get hit by the frontal from this guy, from the tree. You'll probably survive if you have this vial, and you probably won't survive if you don't, right? So you could take this if you are in like a dungeon where you expect to take a lot of big one-shotty mechanics, right? Which is not super often. And this also probably procs on like a high tyrannical boss that does really big AoE damage or something. So this might be worth taking in like high tyrannical keys or something. But this is my go-to, the regenerative fungus, just for the passive healing. And I try to avoid taking more than 25% of my maximum health and damage in one shot. So if it's something that I'm not planning on doing frequently, then I don't want to take a power that will help for that situation, right? Because I'm not planning on ever taking more than 25% of my max health and damage if I can avoid it, right? So I will say before, as we get into this boss, this is a tyrannical, what's the Raging, I think? Tyrannical Raging Volcanic. This was just the first week of Mythic Plus. If you go back, you can probably find out what the affixes were. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Tyrannical Raging Volcanic and Tormented, obviously, because this is Season 2. And because it's tyrannical, I didn't show my talents or my soulbind or anything at the beginning of the video. I think I do it at the end, but what I ended up running for the rest of this week is I may not have been running it in this dungeon, but for the rest of the week, what I would suggest you run on this tyrannical raging volcanic week is all of your AoE talents, except I would play Naya instead of Karain, and I would play Hungering Void instead of Ancient Madness, right? So this way, you have Shadow Crash for some big damage, right? You still have Searing Nightmare for when packs are grouped up and everything. But because it's tyrannical, you're going to have like really long boss fights, right? So you want to increase your single target damage as much as you can, which is why you play Naya and why you play Hungering Void, right? Because Naya gives you the mastery buff from Fey Guardians. Grove Invigoration is what it's called. And Hungering Void will let you have longer void forms, right? So if we watch, we're about to go into the damage phase of this boss, and I saved all my cooldowns, and I was at 4.3k DPS before we started this, and now, yeah, I'm just, popping all my stuff and popping off. So this is where Shadow Priest really shines. Not so much in the burst single target damage, although I am topping the meters, right? 15k almost. Like burst single target damage isn't really our super strong point, but single target damage in general is, and our burst single target is not horrible, right? It's obviously pretty good. I beat the Destruction Warlock and the Havoc Demon Hunter, so a Demonology Warlock might have beaten me there, and maybe I don't remember which specialization of Rogue is the good one right now. It's either Sub or Assassination. One of them does like really good. I think it's Sub, but maybe I'm wrong. One of them does really good single target damage right now, so maybe they would have beaten me on the big single target burst. And then the other one that would probably win as well is a Feral Druid, which most people wouldn't expect because Feral Druids are like pretty underrepresented. But Feral Druid single target pumps, dude. They do a lot of damage, so they would potentially beat me on this single target burst damage scenario. Especially if they've got like Convoke or something. Oh, also Boomkin. Yeah, Boomkin with Convoke and Celestial Alignment and all that should, if they're like super geared and everything, should absolutely blast a Shadow Priest on this boss. But yeah, I mean, a Feral Druid, a Rogue of whichever one is the good one for single target right now, and then a Boomkin, maybe a Fire Mage, but I doubt it. Fire Mage single target, I think, is worse now than it used to be. Oh, and then I changed my thing over here from HPS to DPS overall, so if you're wanting to keep track of that. Okay, this guy, Executioner Verruth, has a couple interesting mechanics. The first one you need to know is he does this Wave of Terror right here. You just need to be standing within like a couple yards of a friend. You don't. A lot of people will tell you to group up on top of the boss. You can do that, but you don't have to. Like me and this Warlock were back here the whole time, right? Because you just need to be standing close to an ally. It doesn't matter if you're close or far from the boss. And then the other thing he does, he won't do it again because he's about to die, but he does that Carnage cast where he targets one of you and then he charges at you after a certain amount of time. You can line of sight that. So if you get it on you and you walk behind a wall, it just won't go off and you'll be fine. Right here I take the... Okay, I should probably go back and talk about this. Yeah, so you can line of sight the Carnage. That's one of the reasons why ranged might want to stand at range rather than on top of the boss, right? Because if they have the boss up by, like, let's say a wall, it's hard... What I'm trying to say is it's hard to line of sight the boss if you're in melee range, right? If you're far away, then it's a lot easier to line of sight the boss, and you can get rid of a lot of the damage that you take from the Carnage casts, right? Okay, so this is the only Anima orb that has 3 good powers, in my opinion. All 3 of these are pretty good. I would take all 3 of these in different situations, right? I already have one of these Champions brands. I'm not positive if they stack, honestly. If they do, then there's no problem taking the second one, right? But on Tyrannical, what I would suggest is take the Dagger of Necrotic Wounding on Tyrannical. It's 20 procs per minute hasted, which means it'll proc every 3 seconds basically. And the more haste you have, as a Shadow Priest we love haste, so this is a good sign. The more haste you have, the more it procs. And basically it just deals X amount of physical damage over 8 seconds and reduces healing and absorption received by 2%, stacking up to 10 times. So anything that's healing itself will take less healing. But the big thing is that it does this much damage, 503 over 8 seconds, but it'll proc, 20 something times every minute, right? Which is a lot of procs. This does a pretty decent amount of single target damage. Like it cranks for a lot of people. This one, like I said before, I would take it in several situations. Having increased mastery is pretty good. And then the Volcanic Plumage, I would usually take this on fortified weeks. Although it's kind of hard to say because the Champions brand would be really nice having increased mastery on fortified weeks, or even increased crit, depending on how this works. I still need to figure out if your crit goes above your mastery, will you get crit instead from this, or will you just continue to get mastery? Like, let's say you choose this power right now when I've got 16% mastery and 8% crit, and then I pop my Soul Letting Ruby or whatever, and my crit is now 40%. Does this buff that it's giving me change to crit, or does it stay as mastery? Depending on the answer to that question, this could be a really good fortified choice, because if it does give you crit, then you could probably get close to like 60-70% crit if you have 2 of these, Soul Letting Ruby and the Necromantic Tome. Yeah, there's a lot of... And Ancient Madness. You could potentially get a lot of crit if that's how this works. Although I'm not positive. I'm pretty sure it just goes off your character sheet stats. So it would be mastery for me. In which case, this is pretty good, but not great. And like I said, the Volcanic Plumage is really good. For Fortified, especially just because it does a lot of damage. It hits, I'm pretty sure it's uncapped. It hits anything that is beneath the plume of flame or whatever, right? So if you pull like 20 mobs into one spot, you can hit all 20 with it, which is pretty nice, right? The necrotic axe or whatever will only ever hit one thing for every time it procs, obviously. But yeah, so the big thing about Volcanic Plumage, like I said before, is that it gives you extra CC, right? Because it knocks stuff up. Okay, so moving into the next pack, this one has 2 stalkers in it. So you need to keep in mind that there are these 2 stalkers that you need to watch. Sorry, I just had music popping up in my ears from something, I don't know what it was. Okay, so yeah, you've got these 2 stalkers that you have to watch. Not super deadly, especially because it's tyrannical, right? Although, because it's raging, you need to be worried probably at the end. If anything dies before the stalkers, then you need to be careful, because they're gonna do extra damage because they've got the raging buff, right? So right there, you can see anytime these nameplates go up in the air like that, right? That's because they're getting knocked up from Volcanic. And as you can see, it happens a decent amount, right? So Volcanic, I think only our Warlock took Volcanic Plumage on this one. And then me and the Demon Hunter took the Battle Axe or whatever. So that's just from one person doing all those knockups, right? So imagine if you had it on 3 people instead, right? It'd be pretty good. This pack, you've just got the Stingers to worry about. I think there's just one. Yeah, it looks like there's just one. And then you need to kick the Nourish the Forest casts, the Bramblethorn coat thing. But this is all stuff that hasn't changed since 9.0, so you should be familiar with it by now. That Anima injection that the Snigger casts is a magic debuff, so you can mass dispel it if it goes on one of your allies. Although there's nothing else to dispel at that moment, so your healer should just be dispelling it. And then yeah, we go into the Gorge Gullet, which this is single target, so I pop my Mindbender, I pop Void Form, and then I'm just, trying to get as many rifts as possible, and as many Void Bolts as possible, because I'm playing Hungering Void, right? A Shadow Word Death right there for another rift, and then yeah, Void Bolts, Mind Blasts, and Shadow Word Deaths is basically all you want to do right here. The Crushing Leap, not super dangerous, right? You've got tons of time to dodge it. Obviously, if you do get hit, you will die. But yeah, you could dodge it pretty easy. And then we go into a 5-pack right here. My Power Infusion is coming off cooldown, so I'll probably pop it. Yeah, I do. Even though I don't have Mindbender or Void Form, I still use my Power Infusion because haste, first off, so let me go back just a sec so I can say something. Okay, so right here, a lot of people have asked me this question in the past. They say, is it worth using Power Infusion with just my Mindbender, right? Instead of like saving it for Void Form as well? Or they'll say, is it worth using Power Infusion with just my Void Form instead of saving it for all 3, right? And my answer to that is, most of the time, if you're in a Mythic Plus dungeon and you're playing Searing Nightmare, then it is always worth it to use Power Infusion, as long as you're going to get full value out of it. You're going to have it throughout like a whole pack. If the pack is right about to die, then don't use it, obviously. But if you're like going into a pack, like I did in this pack, and I had like 20 seconds left on Mindbender, almost a minute left on Void Form, and my Power Infusion came off cooldown, it's worth it to press Power Infusion there, because you get faster Mind Seer ticks, which means you get more Insanity generation, and you can also cast your Searing Nightmares quicker, right? Haste is really, really good for Shadow Priest, so getting extra haste from Power Infusion is good, right? I could have saved it for my Mindbender maybe, but then I wouldn't have it for this pack. I'd have it for my Mindbender in the next pack, but even then, I mean, it's still just fine to use it without any of that other stuff. I think that this is the correct choice, actually. I think using it here instead of on the next pack with Mindbender is better. So that's the answer to that question. In pure single target, it's probably not worth using your power infusion without Mindbender or Void Form. Only if you're not going to lose a cast of it, right? But that's like, you'd have to have like a 12-minute boss fight or something for that to be the case. But in anything that's not pure single target, especially if you're running like Searing Nightmare, using your power infusion without any other cooldowns is just fine. And then right here, I cast a Shadow Word or a Shadow Crash, and it goes backwards because my camera's in the wall, right? So my macro that targets the ground for my Shadow Crash targeted the wall instead of out here, which is super annoying. But that's something that could be fixed if I just tilted my camera straight down. Although that's like a sucky camera angle that I don't like. Okay, so we're finishing up this pack. You'll notice I popped my Mindbender at the end of the pack. Whether that was the correct decision, probably. Yeah, probably. Because then going into this pack, I could have my Mindbender here. Yeah, but no, I definitely think it was the right decision to use it before. Because now I'm going to use my Void Form instead. And I'm using my Void Form about halfway through this pack. That root goes off, so I Mass Dispel it. That's very important, especially on Volcanic weeks. If that root goes off, you want to Mass Dispel it ASAP, because it has a dot that it does to everybody, and nobody can move. So if you have anything that you need to dodge, like Volcanic or anything else, you need to Mass Dispel that ASAP, right? Oh, so now I'm showing my talents. Okay, back there, let's go back and look real quick. You'll see that I'm actually playing Karain in this dungeon, even though, yeah, so I'm playing Karain. Oh, I am playing Hungering Void, though. Usually with Karain, you play Ancient Madness, but I am playing Hungering Void. I ended up swapping Karain for Naya in future keys, but, I mean, the difference between Karain and Naya is not huge, right? Especially now that they both have all of their, now that we're, like, higher levels of Renown, you can have Rabid Shadows as Karain and Naya. It just means that they're a lot closer. Although I do think if you're really trying to min-max it, you would play Naya for single target damage on a high Tyrannical key. But this is just a 15. Me and my homies are going to be able to do it just fine, so not a big deal. We go into the Mistcaller here. Need to dodge these dodgeballs. Not super hard. It can be a little... you can get kind of trolled by Volcanic Plumage sometimes on this, because if you get plumaged right before this dodgeball comes out, you're mid-air when it comes out and you die. That can really suck. But you know, it's not super crazy. It's just the regular boss that we fought 1,000 times. Oh, right there was a super pro play. I'll go back. I'm watching this Vulpin. Because it's going to disappear eventually. And because I'm playing Karain, I have first strike, right? Which means that if I hit something before it hits me, I get extra crit. So I watch this Vulpin, and you want to CC these Vulpins so they don't hit anybody, right? And then I tag it with a Shadow Word Pain right before it despawns, and I get the buff. So if we watch closely, I'm going to tag it, it despawns, I have the buff, right? So you get extra crit from that. It can be kind of hard. You don't want to tag those with dots, usually, because if you tag one early, right, and then, like, several seconds before it despawns, right there, I get pretty lucky with that Volcanic Plumage. I barely dodge. Like I was saying, those Vulpins, if you tag them with a dot, and then people try to CC it afterward, the dot will break the CC over and over again. So you do not want to dot the Vulpins unless it's about to despawn, or you have alternatives that you can use to hit it, right? You can hit it with a Shadow Crash, like I just did. I cleaved it with a Shadow Crash, so I hit the boss and the Vulpin. Or you can hit it with just a Mind Blast, but you definitely don't want to hit it. Even a Void Bolt would work. Although all of your Void Bolts should be going into the boss, especially if you're playing Hungering Void. Although, yeah, so just don't dot them. Feel free to tag them with other stuff. But also, if you're going to tag it with like a Mind Blast or anything like that, right? A Shadow Word Death even. Make sure you tag it really early or right before it despawns. Because if you tag it in the middle when it's just sitting there, and people think it's CC'd and then you hit it and it is not CC'd anymore, like right now I should hit it immediately or I should just wait until it's about to despawn and then hit it, right? Because if people think it's CC'd and then you hit it and now it's not CC'd, they aren't paying attention to it, right? Then they can get blindsided and frozen and die, right? Which you don't want to do. You don't want to be the reason that your homies get frozen in ice blocks. So I would say, if you're doing a really high key, like near the limit of your keys, right? You're like, oh man, this is the first time we've ever done an 18. I need to make sure I'm playing at my very best, etc. Right? Don't risk it at that point. It's not worth. Like the increase that you get from tagging the Vulpin is super super small. It is an increase, right? But it's a really small increase, so it's not worth. And it's pretty dangerous, right? Because like I said, if people think it's CC'd and you break the CC, then people will die. So yeah, only do it if you're like pretty certain that you can actually do it without any downsides, right? Like I said, it's not worth it on a super super dangerous key. It won't bring your overall up from 4K to 10K, right? It's not going to do anything crazy like that. So to play safe, don't do it. Okay, so now we're on Sagadan. I'm going to pause real quick so I can talk about his mechanics. So this guy is mostly a tank thing. So like the frost guy and the fire guy are mostly healer things, and then the guy who does the wave of terror, Verruth or whatever his name is, he's mostly a positioning thing. So it's kind of a group wide mechanic. But this guy is mostly a tank focused guy. He'll do like a slam thing that slams the tank. But he does do this massive smash thing where he pulls everybody in and puts bindings on everybody. I'd like to have Mindbender up for this guy because Mindbender will cleave 4 of these bindings if you use it on this guy. Also, Shadow Crashing will get rid of all of these bindings in one shot usually if you get a crit, so that's nice. But just having a Demon Hunter, I mean, he just makes really quick work of that. You can also Searing Nightmare a couple times. If you had like 60 Insanity and you all got gripped in, you could Mind Sear 2 Searing Nightmares and you're all out. And it'll help your overall damage. But yeah, I mean, you just want to break those as quickly as possible and then run away. It's a root, so Dispersion should get you out of it. Although I haven't ever tried it, so let me talk about those real quick too. Yeah, so Dispersion should get you out of this, but use it at your own risk, or wait for my future video where I try to disperse it and it does or does not work, and then I can tell you for certain if it works, right? But Dispersion should work for that, because it works on most routes. Every route, as far as I know. Okay, so these are the 3 that you get from Sagadan the Breaker. I'm going to hit play real quick just so we can get rid of that. Nice. Okay, so these 3 are kind of lackluster. The dancing shoes are good for tanks, especially tanks who are really weak when they first go into a pull. Although the dancing shoes aren't as good as the bulwark thing that they get, which is better. It's like this but better. So we would pretty much never take this. I don't see any reason really. We will pretty much never get any melee attacks against us, and if we're getting ranged attacks, we've got other problems because we've already pulled threat, and there's all sorts of issues with that. So I would pretty much never take this. I think it's better to plan for good play than it is to plan for bad play, right? So if you were planning on taking a lot of ranged attacks or melee attacks, right, then maybe you would take this. But if that is happening, it's because you're playing poorly, right? So you shouldn't take this, right? Then you got the Dripping Fang, which gives 5% leech up to 20% based on your missing health. Leech is not great for Shadow Priest. Obviously, we don't mind it, right? It's not bad for certain. But this one, again, is kind of along the similar lines of you're planning for bad play, right? Because you could, if you play perfectly, quote unquote, right, then you would only ever get 5% leech from this, right? Even though it increases up to 20, because the better you play, the less you have missing health, right? So you could look at this and say, oh, I could get up to 20% leech. That's really nice. But like I said, that's planning for bad play. That's planning on missing a lot of health a lot of the time, right? Which you don't want to do. So you should look at this and say, it's 5% leech. Ever, right? And then if you so happen to lose some health, it gets better, right? But you shouldn't plan on that. So this one's like 5% leech, which is like pretty trash, especially for Shadow Priest. Healers, I know that there are some healers that really like leech, so maybe they would take this. But yeah, pretty much never take this as a Shadow Priest, which means that we only ever take this one, the Stone Ward, which shields you for 20% of your maximum health. The absorb refreshes every 45 seconds, right? So this one is just passive defensiveness, and it's not you don't have to play badly to get maximum value out of this, right? You can play perfectly and you'll still get the best value out of this that is possible, right? So this is the one that I would take, and it's the one I end up taking, and it's the one I would suggest 99.99999% of the time that you take as well, because that's a pretty big absorb shield, 20% of your max health. And if you're lucky and you're playing Naya and you pop Grove Invigoration, so Fey Guardians, and you pop Desperate Prayer, and then the shield refreshes, your max HP is going to be like 60k plus, right? Because you get increased health from Grove Invigoration, and you also get increased health from Desperate Prayer, right? So your shield can get bigger than you would typically think. If you have those two things going. But you can't really plan around that, right? So you just kind of want to take it and then play regularly, and if you get lucky, you get lucky, right? Okay, so I've had questions before as well about like priority when you've got all three damage cooldowns running, or even if you have like 2 damage cooldowns running, etc., right? So I'll talk a little bit about priority here. Right now, I don't have any of my cooldowns going, but the next pack, or maybe the pack after that, I should have all 3. My Power Infusion just came up. I'll probably save it, because I'm going to have Void Form and Mindbender, in the next 10 seconds. Okay, so I'm putting Vampiric Touch on these 4 things, and I'll talk about this real quick. So this is a 4-pack, right? There's 4 mobs that we're fighting, although you can only kind of see 3. You can see this 4th one in the back, but just barely. There's one that's priority, right? The Staghorn should die first, only because it has a couple of casts that you need to kick, right? So what I like to do on 4 packs, I popped my Power Infusion just now, by the way, so I'm not going to have it for my Mindbender and my Void Form, unless I pop my Mindbender and my Void Form as soon as they come up here, which I don't think I will, but maybe I do. So what I like to do on 4 packs is, let's go back just a little and I'll show you. So the tank runs in and starts gathering stuff up, right? So right now, everything is not gathered up, right? So I start casting a Vampiric Touch on this Staghorn, and then I tab target to the Gorger, right? So the Vampiric Touch goes on the Staghorn, it goes on the Gorger, on the Acid Gullet. Now everything's grouped up. I put my final Vampiric Touch out, and then I start spamming. Okay, so I do pop Void Form. So I start spamming Searing Nightmare. I pop my Void Form here. I'm going to follow it up with a Shadow Crash. And then probably a Devouring Plague or a Searing Nightmare would be good as well. Or a Void Bolt, we'll see. So I Shadow Crash, I Mind Blast. Okay, so I double Mind Blasted there to get the both of the Shadow Flame Rifts within my huge Ancient Madness crit window. And then, yeah, I'm just going to start blasting Searing Nightmares. Those Mind Blasts whenever I can. Some Devouring Plagues here would be good. Another Mind Blast would be good. And then, yeah, just finish off the pack with some Void Bolts and things like that. Also, I'm not sure if other people pop their cooldowns here. Most likely they didn't, right? I'm at 16k, they're both at 9. So it's likely that nobody else popped their cooldowns there, which meant that I got full value out of my Void Form and my Mindbender. Yeah, people probably saved their cooldowns for this pull, which it would be nice to have your cooldowns for this, but having your cooldowns for this pull, you'll do more damage for sure, but it's not going to change your rotation pretty much at all on a big pull like this. So we've got like 8 targets or something, 9 targets maybe, as soon as all the larvae die. If you have no cooldowns, then what you're going to be doing is just Searing Nightmare a bunch to spend Insanity, and Shadow Crash on cooldown. And that's basically your entire rotation, right? If you do have your Mindbender and your Void Form and your Power Infusion active, then you're going to be doing the same thing, right? You'll press Mindbender, and then you'll press Void Form, and then you'll cast your Shadow Crash. You'll PI somewhere in there, because it's off the cooldown. Off the global cooldown, I should say. And then, yeah, you're just going to be spamming. You're not going to worry with 9+ targets. You don't worry about doing any Mindbender shenanigans. You just let it hit stuff, right? And you use it for the increased Insanity generation and the damage that it does, although that's small. And then you don't worry about proccing any Shadow Flame Rifts until you get down to 5 or less targets. So you're just going to be spamming Searing Nightmare the whole time anyway. So it's fine, right? Like I said, your cooldowns aren't going to change your rotation on this big of a pack at all, right? Now we're down to 5 targets. Now is when I would start using my Mind Blasts and my Shadow Word Deaths to try and proc my Mindbender Rifts. My Mindbender just came off cooldown and I used it, which is questionable just because stuff is all dying already. I Shadow Crash here at the end. Oh, there were 6 things alive right there, actually. And then, yeah, I'm sniping stuff with Shadow Word Death to get the final procs of my Mindbender. And then, yeah, it's still up for like the next 5 seconds, which means I didn't get full value out of it, but it was pretty decent. And then we go straight into the boss, which is bad for me because I have only Void Form up now. And let's see if I use it or if I save it. I do use it, okay. So then my Power Infusion and my Mindbender will come up within 5 seconds of each other, which means I should save them. I should save my Power Infusion for my next Mindbender, right? Because they're going to be up within 5 seconds of each other, so I can get use out of both of them. So my Power Infusion is now off cooldown. I should be, okay, I just used it now, and then I should be using my Mindbender ASAP. I pop it. Okay, and then I Shadow Word Death, one of the... Let's go back and look. If we watch carefully, these larvae that are dying, I'm going to hit one with a Shadow Word Death to get the Death and Madness proc, which gives me more Insanity, right? So if we watch, I popped my Mindbender. I see that this larva is about to die. So I tab target and I Shadow Word Death it, which gives you the Shadow Flame Rift damage on the boss as well as the larva. It gives you the Insanity from killing the larva, and it resets your Shadow Word Death, which means you get another Shadow Flame Rift on the boss. So that was a single target increase, right? It would be a single target increase even if the Shadow Flame Rift didn't hit the boss because of the Insanity gen, but because it did, it's even better, right? Yeah, so now it's just the rest of the fight. Super simple, same Tredova fight we've seen 1,000 times. Basically, you want to have a plan for where you're going to go when the green swirlies come out. So right here, I just move a little bit further and out of the way. You can be Searing Nightmare spamming the larva to help kill them. but I tend to focus on doing single target boss damage. Although right there I turned and started hitting them. I think that Shadow Priest, obviously Shadow Priest is really good at single target, right? So I've got a Demon Hunter in here and a Warlock in here. The Demon Hunter is definitely better than me at AoE, right? So he should kind of be prioritizing those larvae. And then the not Demon Hunter, the Warlock has several abilities that will hit stuff, I don't remember what it's called, but like the big circle they put on the ground that puts a dot on everything. They've got stuff that can hit the larva as well. So do I, so it's fine to, be hitting them. But the Demon Hunter should be focusing them, whereas me and the Warlock should be cleaving them, right? So right here, I Searing Nightmare a couple times, but I'm mostly hitting the boss. And then one other thing I'll mention, when those green circles come out, if you jump right as one lands, it'll be invisible for the rest of the time. So every time the circles come out in the future, it'll come out and you'll see the green swirly, but then when it's on the ground, you won't be able to see. Right here is really sketchy. I get hit by 2. Like I was saying, the swirly, after it hits, you won't be able to see the circle that it leaves ever again, right? It'll be invisible permanently. So right here, we only need 2% trash. I shouldn't be worrying too much about hitting everything. We just want to kill a couple things as fast as possible. We do, and that's the end of the key. So let me know what you guys thought in the comments below. Hopefully this helped you guys. If you liked the video, make sure you leave a like. If you really liked it, feel free to subscribe and join my Discord or follow me on Twitch. Any of those things would be awesome. Share this with your friends. I'd like that too. I do plan on doing many more of these moving into Season 2, so keep an eye out for other dungeons, right, if you're having troubles or whatever. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.